Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to our coverage of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We are up to the 5th episode of the 3rd season. It's called Second Skin. Second Skin, a lot of S's there. It is the first aired on October 24th, 1994. It was written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe, directed by Les Landau, and in this episode, Kira is kidnapped by the Cardassians, who try to convince her that she is really one of them. We're joined by Clay. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. This episode raises a very important question for me, which is, does this episode confirm that the writers of Star Trek Discovery watched Deep Space Nine, or does it confirm that they did not watch Deep Space Nine? So
you think that entire show is an homage to this episode?
I think that might be a little too strong of a word. I don't know. It's let's put it this way. In Deep Space Nine, they rightly so wrapped that all up in one episode. Yes, right. Yeah, it didn't stretch it out. So you realized once Kira got turned that it was still Kira on the other side. Yeah, I had a feeling that they weren't gonna. I mean, as it was going, I was kind of hoping they were going to go the other way with it and have her be like Total Recall it, basically, where it's like, I don't really believe you. It's probably true, but I'm going to live my new life now. Yeah, right. That would have been interesting. But yeah, I mean, obviously they were going to go back to the way it was before. But yeah, it was shockingly similar to what they did on Discovery, except for the fact that the process seemed to be a lot less invasive. Yeah, if you're the same size, I guess it's a little bit easier than cutting down your bones and whittling out your heart or whatever. But anyway, we're going to take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip, and me and Clay are going to come back and break down Second Skin.
Do you remember when you were on long-range reconnaissance in the Vestry Woods? You thought you saw a Cardassian soldier and opened fire on him. You hit your target only to find out...
I killed a Harakat.
Huh? A mother Harakat who was nursing her young.
How do you know that? I never told anyone that story.
I know about it because we placed that story in your memories, Ileana, just like we gave you every other memory you have. What we couldn't extract from the real Kira, we got from other prisoners or just invented ourselves. Ask yourself two things, Ileana. First, is there anything that I've said we've done that's beyond the capabilities of the Obsidian Order? I assume you know there isn't. Second, if you're not my operative, if you're not who I say you are, why would I be playing this game?
So, Clay, it actually, the first draft of this episode featured O'Brien in the Kira role. He was going to learn that for the past 20 years, he was a robot. He had been he was a Cardassian undercover spy, and that the real Miles O'Brien had been kidnapped, and he had been altered into him and implanted with his memories. And so the entire thing of the series history with O'Brien would have been he was actually a Cardassian. They didn't like that. They had a hard time figuring out how he could have a fully human child if he was a Cardassian. So they abandoned that. They turned it into Kira. And the first draft of the Kira episode actually had what you were hoping was going to happen. It was going to end with ambiguity as to whether or not she was Cardassian or not. That's ballsy. They should have done that. They should have done that. And it's very inspired. But you were saying Total Recall was inspired by Philip K. Dick, which is the what androids dream, or whatever that short story that he had is, which I think is the Total Recall. No, that's Blade Runner. Total Recall is called Total Recall. Right, and the Blade Runner is Blade Runner is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Yes, which is a great title. So that would have been interesting. This being Star Trek, it can't go quite that far. I'm kind of surprised that I hope somebody nixed that pretty quickly with the O'Brien stuff, because that doesn't make any sense. Why would you use him? I mean, Kira makes so much more sense. It's it ties into the trope that they've got here of O'Brien is the character who, when an episode needs to have someone suffer, they usually stick O'Brien into that role. It's actually kind of a trope. They call it O'Brien must suffer, but Kira works better here. And O'Brien had also had whispers, which is kind of the same idea of him being replaced.
I just think it writes itself so much easier if you use Kira, because I mean all of the tension is built into her character.
Yes, yeah.
You know, whereas O'Brien, you have to be like, well, okay, who gives a shit that he's like? It's you have to do a lot more thread connecting with O'Brien than you do with Kira.
Yeah, O'Brien kind of has O'Brien is like second in the second character you think of when you think of Cardassian hatred. I guess they they've worked that into his character, but Kira is obviously much more thematically appropriate for it, in my opinion. So it's right that it's her.
It's easier to set up a backstory too, because you know we only know as much about her as she has said on the show.
Yep.
So it's easy to kind of fabricate stuff, or quote unquote fabricate stuff.
It would also cause you to go back through with the entire of TNG and realize that is a Cardassian spy in the entire time that you've been watching that, which is kind of upsetting.
I hope that writer who came up with that idea was fired. Because it's stupid.
That's a stupid idea. Let's see here. So, Second Skin, you haven't watched all of the Star Trek DS9 Season 3 episodes so far, but...
What are you talking about?
The Season 3 has been interesting. Every episode to this point, including the next one that we're going to talk about, which is The Abandoned, has to do with identity. You saw The Search, which is Odo coming to terms with his sort of role and his identity. The Abandoned will further flesh that out. We had House of Quark, which is about Quark sort of assuming a mantle that he doesn't really deserve. Equilibrium was about figuring out what Dax is all about. And Second Skin is about Kira figuring out what it is. But I think I don't know. This is a very well written episode, I think, that doesn't particularly grab me. And I think what I'm actually interested in it about the episode is not what the plot is really implying on some level. I like the character interactions between Kira, and I really like the Legat Cardassian character, the father character. And I think that it works. I'm glad the episode doesn't really focus too much on the mystery of what's going on, and it's much more of a character story and figuring out the what everyone perceives of themselves. I think it's well written because almost every storyline is about someone being different than what their perception is.
Yep.
Which, because Garrick is heavily involved, it's unclear what he's doing. Odo transforms into a suitcase at the very end, which, so that he's like he's literally different. Kira is kind of trying to figure out where she stands and everything like that. I think it's all the story, and even their plot to get to Cardassia involves them pretending to be a ship that's not what it is. So I think it's well written, and I think it's thematically interesting. It doesn't really grab me too much, although I think it's very solid. So how did you feel about it? Did you enjoy it more than I did, or are you the same thing?
I actually liked it quite a bit.
Yep.
I mean, I think I'm a little bit biased because this was basically, you change a couple characters and this becomes an episode of The Prisoner, more or less.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it kind of literally was an episode of The Prisoner, I think. I really liked it. I thought the character stuff was really good. I felt like it was fell into the Star Trek trap of, we have a really solid A plot and the B plot is just sort of like a bunch of guys on their way to help wrap up the A plot.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think there was a lot going on there. The Garrick stuff was pretty good, but just overall it was kind of, it's like just watching guys travel.
Yes.
Although I did really like how, for some reason on their mission, everybody showed up in uniform except Sisko. Sisko decided to go business casual for some reason.
And it's not, he wears a much better outfit in the next episode, which I was hoping to talk about too. But yeah, he's his civilian clothing is in Star Trek lineage of being bizarre and not understable about why people wear that. Yeah,
and it was so strange because they come into the scene and he's there in his, away, casual clothes. I'm like, oh, okay, it's one of those missions. And then they pan around and everybody else is still in Starfleet uniform. I guess he thought he had a very different understanding of what this mission was going to be, I guess.
I don't mind that storyline. You learn a little bit about Garrick. For some reason, Garrick feels a little bit off for me. It feels like he feels that he's more trapped than he actually is. I know that they lay a plot, and they lay sort of a blackmail expectation out of him, but it kind of catches me a little bit off guard of how ill-prepared Garak is to get around it on some level, although I understand him going and being there. I like the fact that he kills the guy at the very end. My favorite moment might be the fact that in the final scene, Garak related, it might be the last scene where the fatherly Cardassian tells Kira to never trust Garak.
Yeah.
He doesn't really explain anything outside of that. He just says he's a man who can't be trusted.
I'm wondering if I'm going to have a problem with him coming up, because from what I've seen, this episode especially, it seems like he can be a bit of a crutch, because all you need to do with Garak to insert him into a story and make him interesting is like he has to know some obscure piece of Cardassian knowledge that nobody realizes he knows, so he can get around something. And then at the end, someone says, by the way, don't trust that guy. Like I can see them using him as sort of like a
get out of jail free.
Yeah. Because it's like, oh, we're in this situation that Cardassians, how are we ever going to do this? And then he's like, well, I know a guy. And then he says some, that kind of thing. I don't know how often they're going to do that. And then, and if you bookend it with, do not trust this man, then it's very evocative.
However, it's also the plot of that leads you to why not on some level. Like, I think the plot for him here suffers a little bit. It's not really a plot. He's kind of a device used here, but he doesn't, for what he does, I don't feel the reason he does it is strong enough. You know what I mean? Like they say that we won't let you stay on Deep Space Nine, which is maybe kind of important because if he's kicked off the station, we learned that he's on the station because it's a safe haven for him. Like he can't be touched there really. So that's the reason why he's staying there. And that makes sense on paper. It just feels flimsy when I watch the episode that's the reason he goes through everything. I feel like he should have more of a personal stake in it, even though that is very personal. It's weird. Maybe I'm a little bit off and being too hard on it, but that's the sense that I got from it.
Well, the flip side to what I was saying actually is it makes it a little bit more believable for him to just kind of do stuff without too much understanding of why he's doing it. Because you can never quite be sure exactly what his motivations are, which again is a good thing and a bad thing. It makes him interesting and kind of mysterious on some level, but it also could be used as a crutch.
You know what I think is he's actually, I don't think you saw the preview. He's actually, we've seen him kill a small handful of people, which is kind of interesting because maybe we did see it in The Wire, but I feel like outside of The Wire, you don't get I don't get a truly, are you supposed to get more of a sense of Garak is deeply terrifying? You know what I mean? Do you think that
I mean, anybody who can get the drop on Stringer Bell is pretty terrifying. Should he have more? He kind of breaks here a little bit where Sisko has the line, Mr. Garak, that's the only truthful thing you've ever said to me, where Garak says that I will leave you all behind if anything goes wrong. Yeah.
Do you feel that you need more? I feel you kind of need maybe more of that, and that his facade of this pleasantness to me feels almost too much of the character. I feel like the facade should be cracking a little bit more, at least occasionally, so that you see a really terrifying Garak underneath it, because he kills very quickly. He'll kill at the drop of a hat, you know? Right.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I enjoy that. I think those characters are the most interesting characters in a situation like this. Like I'm sure I've talked about this before. Maybe I haven't. I think having that one character whose allegiance you can never truly understand, who does have an edge, adds so much to a show like this, where you have basically a group of people who are all on the same side. The reference I always use for this, because it's the first time that I really recognized it as a child, was I don't know if you ever watched Transformers Beast Wars.
Mm-hmm. The CGI after school special.
Yes, yeah, it was great. Doesn't really hold up too much on rewatch. But there, you had all your Autobot animals, and all your Decepticons were dinosaurs. And in the first episode, one of the dinosaur Decepticons switches sides and starts hanging out with the Autobots. But they never fully trust him, and you never really fully trust him. He always ends up playing for the good guys, but you're never entirely sure that that's what he's going to do, and he adds a little bit of edge to everything. And I think those characters are great. And I think Garak, giving him more of an edge, I think only would help the character.
Yeah.
I don't know if necessarily he needs to start killing everybody, but having him do that shows that he will do it and won't hesitate to do it, which makes him that much more dangerous, I guess. It
kind of it seems like it's a Cardassian trait to, like, the Cardassians are not above sort of killing people who are going to interfere with them. They're very this is not the first time we've seen Cardassia, but they're really leaning heavily into the Cardassians are basically George Orwell's 1984 in space. Okay. It's very, you get a sense of it here. There's the Obsidian Order, which is like their sort of covert CIA Gestapo. Why can't I say the word? Gestapo. Okay, well, fuck it. I'll just Gazpacho. It's a pink soup that's served with ice. But there's a dissident faction. There's the military, there's the Obsidian Order, and then within there's a dissident faction that's trying to sort of take away power from both of them on some level, or at least from the Obsidian Order. Mm-hmm. So there's that kind of thing going on. The Cardassians are always laying plots for each other. You had mentioned in the Cardassians episode, which is in season 2, that the Cardassians are always willing to go for a long con on somebody. Yeah, like they plot very, very intricately to hope things go well. What did you think of the Cardassian plot here? And that'll kind of tie into Kira if you want to go off in that direction. But what did you think of the plot? Was it as ridiculous as the Dukat plot in Cardassians, where he waited for a decade to finally nail this guy that he didn't like, or did you think it was a little bit more realistic?
It's not quite as ridiculous as that, but it does fall in line with they're very creative in the way that they interrogate people. This is equally as mindfucky as there are 4 lights. Those are Cardassians, right?
Yes, which is also Orwell. That's a direct ripoff of Orwell. Yeah.
It's equally as messes with your mind as much, but it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more finesse involved. It's like they've kind of refined their methods of fucking with you, and just to be a little bit more creative. Like, they're getting bored with the light thing, so then they have the one creative guy who's like, "Well, I have this new technology," But no, I liked it. I thought it was good, and to go off of what you were saying about how you like the character stuff more than the plot, I think that's what makes the plot work so well. Is that the character stuff is really good, and it's not just a mystery of what's going on. They're letting you kind of sit in it, and they're letting Kira kind of work through. Like, there's a certain point where they just stop, they stop pushing forward on the mystery, basically, and they just let her marinate in what it could possibly mean that she is a Cardassian.
Yeah. Yep.
And I thought it was great that they did a nice turn on it at the end, where, it's not just that they were fucking with her, they were actually fucking with this guy, which I thought was a great little turn. Because usually the endings to these types of plots are pretty, you see them, you know what they are, but you enjoy them anyway. So seeing that, I was surprised by that. So I like that. I thought that was good.
I like the fact that he, it kind of ruins that guy's life too, on a sense. Yeah. Like the Cardassian military or the Obsidian Order actually succeeds in some way at what they wanted to do. They got him out of the dissident order. So sorry, go ahead. Finish. No, it's I think that it works in the character stuff makes you sort of skip over the fact that it's a little ridiculous that Kira looks exactly like his true daughter as a Cardassian. Like, that's a little bit absurd, but I think that if like you were saying, if it stuck to the mystery aspect, I think you would just end the episode going, that's absurd. Like, this is just a ridiculous episode. How could that happen? But because they distract you with some solid characterization, I don't really care about that problem as much.
Yeah. And it's different from, say, the way that they handle that stuff in, like, The Prisoner, because you kind of go in to The Prisoner understanding that A, what they're doing is ridiculous, and B, that part of what they're doing is leaning into the ridiculousness. Like, it's everybody in the village is committing to believing the ridiculousness, which is why it fucks with 6 so much. Mm-hmm. But in Star Trek, it's like, yeah, there's a little bit more of a little bit shorter leash on your suspension of disbelief for some of that stuff. So the fact that she looks just like his daughter is a little bit weird. However, I would like to comment on the level of mutual denial that Kira and the father both have at the end there, when they're like, you know what? I hope she's out there somewhere just living her best life. And Kira's like, you know what? I bet she is out there. She's dead. You saw her body. There's no way that dead body wasn't his daughter.
That's
the dead body that they show her that looks just like her and is a Bajoran has to be the daughter, right?
I would think so. I guess they don't really clarify. I would have to think so, but I don't know.
They obviously don't say it or anything, but I mean, like, if you put the pieces together, his daughter is dead and you saw her.
Sure. And do you think that that's maybe why? Is that what caused the Obsidian Order to have to go with the Kira plot? Would you think?
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I just thought it was a funny detail where it's like they're talking wistfully about this girl who's probably still out there. And it's like, well, if you're using all the evidence they gave you within this one episode, there's a solid chance she is dead.
Interesting. I actually didn't even, because I took them at their word that, or Kira kind of throws out she's like, maybe it's a clone or something. I was like, oh, maybe it's a clone, and I won't think about it. That's
also a long game, but there was a big shortcut to the end point there if they just killed the daughter.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, she didn't even have to be killed by them. I mean, she might
they could have just found her, yeah. That's
fan fiction.
That's what I mean with the...
Check my fan fiction site for what happened to the daughter.
If the Obsidian Order found out that person had died and then they went to the Kira plot as like a backup way to get him or something, I could see that happening. But
I mean, they do mention that they use Kira because if they did use the daughter, then she would have just started playing ball.
Yes, right.
And that would have, broken the illusion they were going for. But yeah, I mean, my mind is on her being dead, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also it's funny that it would have tied into the identity thing better if Kira was unsure if she was a Cardassian at the end, because if, say she's alive, right, we'll just assume that they're wrong and it's that dead body was a clone or something. If the Cardassian is alive, she's living a life as a Bajoran at this point until the Cardassians find her and sort of re-trigger her brain thing. So that would have fit more thematically with Kira. Just sort of, if she was unsure of what was going on, she would have just had to end the episode going forward saying, this is my life now. And since this is what it is now, and this is all that I remember, this is what I just have to live with. And that would be the Cardassian girl living as a Bajoran being unsure of who she actually is.
Right. I was kind of disappointed that in the video that the girl made for herself before she went under surgery.
Very totally Ronnie Cox at himself.
Yeah, I was sad Ronnie Cox didn't show up and just start smoking a cigar and laughing at her.
That's the best part of Total Recall, when he's laughing at himself, which is a great thing. So it's about identity. A lot of DS9's third season every episode has been about identity to this point. It's a cynical episode, I think, on some level. It's not as cynical as The Abandoned would get, but the show is very interested with appearances, right? Which ties into the criticism of the Star Trek universe that the show is doing is also based on the identity of it. So it's sort of a meta commentary. The writers are very interested in showing the underside of what people are actually thinking, whether it's the Federation or it's just these character interactions or it's these character stories. Surprisingly, it doesn't really dig deep into Kira's reaction to this, which I think is maybe a fundamental flaw of the episode. I don't think it's bad, but I don't feel you spend a lot of time with Kira coming to grips with what this might mean. Surprisingly, would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't. I think overall, I felt like the ending was a little bit lacking from the way that they wrap up, how they rescue her, and even just the wrap up in general. Like the scene with her and the dad was good, but yeah, they didn't really give her any time to kind of deal with everything that had happened.
I mean, they shot it in the foot by making it that she is clearly not a Cardassian. When Bashir's like, well, he gave me the test and he said, I'm 100% Bajoran and not a Cardassian. So once they do that, it makes she doesn't have any time to reflect on it because it doesn't mean anything. And during the whole captivity thing, she is very... The only point she comes close to breaking is when that final interrogation scene where she's sort of like, her like face is quivering and she doesn't want to answer the questions about the Federation ships in the sector or whatever he's asking her.
Mm-hmm. You know what they could have done that would have been kind of interesting as an ending is if they had a line or something about the surgical reversal of the Cardassian thing was going to take a couple days or something, so she kind of had to sit with it.
Oh, yeah,
so
right.
They get to do that last scene with her and the father where she's still looking like a Cardassian, and then after that, they can get maybe like a little beat of
her looking in a mirror.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been, because you don't get too, which is, it's funny because of what the episode is about, it actually turns into more of a drama about the father and daughter relationship than anything. It kind of switches it, which is funny because I like that stuff. I like that storyline. I think it's really effective, but it's not what the episode sets out as, and it's not really what you think it's going to do, but it ends up that way. Continues the Kira learning that not all Cardassians are bad sort of thing for her, which is fine. That sounds a little bit dismissive. I think Kira is actually probably the strongest character on the show at this point in terms of what they want to do with her. And I think the actress has really come a long way since the first season in Emissary, where Emissary was kind of rough. It's like, ooh, this is not good, but she's in a good place right now.
Yeah, I think I've probably said this already, but she's my favorite character on the show right now. Yeah. I think her acting is really strong, and what they're doing with her is interesting as long as they keep her away from that, Bajoran boyfriend. Yeah,
right. The boring Bajoran males that she tends to fall for, which is we could probably talk about it. Next time that happens, we'll have to discuss why she's doing this thing. What's the draw there, or what the writer draw would be. Let's see here. Is there anything else to say? I mean, did you have anything you wanted to talk about before we go to final thoughts?
I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered it.
I think it reminds me a little bit of TNG's Face of the Enemy, which is one where Troy gets turned into a Romulan, except I think it's more interesting because in the TNG episode, Troy knows the entire time that she is not a Romulan and that it's all a game being played.
Yeah. Sorry, finish your thought before.
No, it's just that this is the more interesting idea. I just wish that the show lingered with it a little bit more than it does.
Is there a Twitter account that is a bot that randomly generates Star Trek plots?
Probably.
Because everything you just said sounded like something you could have just made up off the top of your head.
About the Troy episode, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's one that I follow that unfortunately I think they need to add some new stuff into it because it repeats a lot. But it's a Marvel Comics plot generator. Mm-hmm. And it's really great. It's always like the X-Force stops fighting the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to have a barbecue or something like that.
Yeah. There's a modern day Seinfeld too, which is probably kind of the same thing.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
That seems a little bit more custom made than maybe a bot would be, but it's the same sort of idea.
I have recently discovered the other TNG or Star Trek related Twitter accounts that I really enjoy. One of them is like Captain Picard's Words of Wisdom or something, and the other one is Riker's Google.
Yeah, Riker Googling.
Where the other one, I kind of stopped in my tracks and chuckled the other day because it was just shawarma.
For Riker.
I found it really, really funny that Riker would Google what shawarma is.
The Riker's Googling is funny because he kind of reacts to modern things. Like, you know, so it's like I don't know what it has to do with Riker at some point, but sometimes it is very funny. Like anytime there's a sexual scandal in politics, he'll tweet about it, which is fitting, I think, for that for the gimmick.
I would like to say, when I was watching, I was going through clicking on the next episode to watch, and I just kind of looked down at the bottom of my screen. One of the icons was cut off about 3/4 of the way up. Yep. But I saw a certain pair of eyes, and I was like, oh, hello.
You're talking about Riker.
I know whose top third of a head that is. I'm looking forward to that episode.
He's coming up. He makes his appearance. Let's see here. So I think we're done with Second Skin. We're going to take a break, play an audio clip, and me and Clay will come back. We'll read some patron thoughts, and we'll give our final thoughts, and then we will call it a day.
Here. It doesn't belong to me. I can't keep it.
No. I want you to have it. You may not be my daughter, but until I find Ileana, you're the closest thing I have to family.
I want you to know something. In spite of whatever I might have said, I realize now you're an honorable man. And I think your daughter must have loved you very much.
All right, Clay. So, patron thoughts. We will do that right now. Excuse me. Sorry. If you support the show at patreon.com/thepenskyfile, you can leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes that get read on the show. We'll react to them. Zam Nuclear Wessel writes, Second Skin. Great stuff. Continuing the Kira and Cardassians thread from Duet into others going forward. Also, new evidence that Garrick doesn't know what a stun setting is. Well, we talked about Garrick. I don't think I need to go into him at this point. Christian Potch says, Second Skin, great character work. Kira is great. N-Tech is really slimy. Gamora convinces me as a concerned parent. Garrick does Garrick things. That said, I wonder how easy it is to fool people in the future. How good are the holodecks? Can people tell the difference? If not, how can you know if anything is ever real? Which is true, although I think you could say the same thing about reality as we exist in it, right? There's always the philosophical idea that we're all in a simulation and we just don't know it at this point. How would you know it?
Yeah, I always wondered what like the other side of that argument is. Like, all right, let's say you're correct for a second here. Why and who's doing it? Right.
Well, I mean, if you're religious, isn't God just running a simulation?
That's true. Well, I don't know. Is it a simulation? This is getting too deep. I can't deal with this right now.
Because stuff actually exists in the holodeck, right? Like you can't exist off the holodeck, but it's I don't know.
Holodeck characters only work within the parameters that they're programmed, right? So they don't exactly have free will.
Right, but I think you could argue that people don't have free will either. I think,
clearly, the amount of times that history repeats itself, there's only a finite number of options programmed into the system.
It's basically the Matrix thing,
and
where
it's
the world
always,
just
for
resets.
some reason, I don't know if it's the algorithm that they programmed, but it always ends up on racism, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, well, it's easy. It's a nice fallback to do. Even Star Trek will fall back into racism. Miles O'Brien, he hates the Cardassians, although. Is O'Brien racist? Well, I think DS9 actually changed that because they introduced Cardassians that are good people. But is in the TNG universe, is it racist to hate a group based on if all the people of that group are that way? Is that racist to dislike if they act in a very bad way? Is it racist to dislike them?
Man, asking the tough questions here today.
You know how the Italians are too loud and stuff in real life. Let's see. Second Skin. Matthew Ross says, what a long play to weed out a dissident. Doesn't seem worth it for the Cardies to do this ridiculous subterfuge. They could have used anyone, a low-level person. But the number two at the most visible presence of conflict in the area? Idiots. And you'd think that once the Defiant gets close to Cardassia, someone would have said, hey, look, isn't that a Federation ship? My biggest problem with the episode is actually the break-in. They do this a lot on DS9 where people just appear to rescue people in situations that they shouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I mean, that felt very early TNG to me, where it's just like, well, we need them to wrap this up, so we're just going to have them be there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's tough because it's like them breaking into the Cardassian wherever they were could have been its entire own episode, So it's you got to kind of pick your battles, but it does make their ending feel rushed and kind of just like a little too clean.
Interestingly, they don't use the Defiant's cloaking device here. They're sticking to that rule of only using it in the Gamma Quadrant. Which, this seems like a prime time to use it, I would think. And if it had used the cloaking device, I'd have less of a problem with them getting to Cardassia.
Right.
Yeah, it's just odd. They had to work in the whole Second Skin idea of the ship looking like someone else, which is funny. It seems there are about 12 Cardassians on the entire planet, so they might have missed it. The best part of the episode is the conversation between Garrick and Sisko, as well as Garrick's sudden ability to manipulate the Central Command and whatever else he's connected to. Oh, and Odo's belt. Why does he need one? It must be Renee hitting the craft services too much. This also feels similar to the Frame of Mind episode of TNG of anyone not being what it seems episode from any of the franchise's past and future Voyager episodes, and only a tangential. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just thinking about the episode. How does Odo get into the place as a briefcase?
Get into what place?
Into the end there, when they all show up to save Kira. He's already
someone
there?
Throws him.
Oh,
I think Garrick runs in and throws him on the ground.
Sure.
Which again brings up the plot busting of how does Odo's mass change when he transforms? He should be the same weight.
It's the same way Megatron turns into a pistol.
Right, and the other robots pick him up. Yeah.
That's going to be a heavy-ass pistol.
Let's see. Only a tangential reminder. Hey, the Dominion is coming. Yes, and that's why no one is buying custom suits. We're all back safe now. Whew. So that's actually what I wanted to end. I don't think there's another. Is there another? Second Skin. Let me read Neil's thing first. The final scene's a little hammy, but up to that, this was fantastic. The second Odo, Garrick, and Cisco set off on their adventure, it found a new gear for me, which is interesting. I actually don't like their little adventure, but I do think it's a good episode. Maybe wouldn't say if it's fantastic, but I think it's very, very strong. So thank you, Neil. But the thing I wanted to ask you, Clay, is that since you're unfamiliar with how DS9 works, and before this you had led into the 3-parter, which was the Jem'Hadar to the Search, where it seemed like it was more serialized. This is taken a step back a little bit. This is more of a standalone episode of Star Trek. However, the reference to the Dominion, what they've done in all the episodes since then is that they constantly reference the fact that the Dominion are out there and the station is kind of suffering from it. Like business is bad for Quark and Garrick is how they work around it. What did you think? Did you notice it when they brought it up, or is it what you'd expected, I guess would be the way to describe it?
I think it's great. I think doing it that way is totally fine, and I really enjoy it because it allows you to do sort of standalone episodes without sacrificing the new status quo that you've set up. And it keeps the threat always looming, and it makes even the throwaway episodes. I shouldn't say throwaway episodes, but the
episodes that you feel they just kind of had to make because they needed an episode to come out is kind of how I think about it.
It makes even those ones feel like they're important to the story. Like the next one is kind of that way, which we'll talk about there. But I was very happy with the way that they tied it into everything.
Yeah.
It took we'll get to that in the next one.
Yeah, but so I know that when we ended the search, you were kind of like, oh, it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward, and I think that Season 3, I mentioned this at the time, Season 3 actually suffers a little bit from this. They aren't as focused as they will be in the next couple seasons about what the storyline that's going through is. 3 feels like they recognize that the Dominion is out there, but they're stalling because they don't know what to do with it. So they kind of just mention them in a lot of episodes. That'll change, but I think it's fairly effective, and I like the idea of business on the station not being good. I like the fact that no one's coming to Deep Space Nine because of what could potentially happen to them.
Yeah, and I like that it, you can't. So when you're watching a series that is all plot, there's inevitably the one episode where they take their foot off the gas, and that episode always feels like out of place.
Yeah. But you recognize it for what it is. Yeah,
but by the same token, I think it kind of shows that you can't keep your foot on the gas the whole time. You got to kind of back it off a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, not every episode is gonna. If you're chronicling people's lives on the space station, not every episode is going to be about the Dominion attacking or something, but that's always going to be out there. So I think it's a smart way to do it, and I think it's a realistic way to do it, where it's not everything is going to be about fighting the Dominion.
Yeah,
I'm sure that there were plenty of stories from World War II era world that don't involve bombing raids or Nazis or anything.
You woke up and you had been surgically altered into a German. And you were exactly. Like, what is going on? Yeah. That's about it, I think. So thank you guys for leaving your thoughts. Clay, what are you going to give this episode on our scale here?
I think I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay.
Because it's tough for me, because I really like the Kira stuff, but the B plot doesn't really do it for me. But I like the Kira stuff enough that I would probably recommend it if on like a second tier of episodes. I'd be like, you know what, if you like this character, watch this episode. So I'd probably give it a 4.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a 3, although I think the 3 does disservice to how strong I think it is. I think it's good. I think it misses the mark a little bit about what I would want it to be talking about or have its focus be on. It kind of shifts it to the Kira and the Cardassian relationship, the father-daughter thing. Mm-hmm. I like the play on identity and all that stuff. I think it works well there. It's just to spoil it a little bit, I think that this is a better episode than The Abandoned, but I'd rather watch The Abandoned. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Okay.
So we'll get to that.
You just have a thing for Dabo girls.
That's who doesn't? They have gigantic titties. So we'll call it a day right now. But thank you guys for supporting the show. You can go to all the social media links will be in the description. You can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support the show. You get extra podcasts and you get to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. Let's see here. Anything else? The Discord channel. Go there if you want to do that. That's about it. Clay, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And the shout out to the patrons. So the captain tier patrons get their little shout out at the end here. It is Stephen Cobb, Andrew Curlog, Matthew Cutler, Spinobi, Eric Johnson, Nathan Elliott, Ewan Tibbett, Stecker Sebastiani, Neil Brennan, Carrier Mobility, Doug Valcamp, Michael Pond, Bradley Killens, Rune Vendler, Jay Stanley, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Ben Douglas, Kyle Barrett, Joint Mango, Tarek Latif. Guys, thank you very much. You make the show possible. Since we're a little bit short on time here, I'm going to call it with the non sequitur. We won't do that. Maybe we'll do it at the end of the next episode. But we'll be back in a couple days with The Abandoned.